The glass towers of downtown San Francisco gleamed in the afternoon sun as my driver navigated through traffic. 10 years. 10 years since I'd left California to build my consulting empire in New York. And I was finally coming home. The penthouse apartment in Manhattan, the speaking engagements across Europe, the board positions. None of it mattered as much as this moment. I was 67 years old, financially secure beyond my wildest dreams, and ready to surprise my family. I'd specifically asked my driver not to announce our arrival. I wanted to see the looks on their faces when I walked through that door. My daughter, Jennifer, had been sending me regular updates about how well everything was going. Sarah, my 16-year-old granddaughter, was apparently thriving under her care. The girl had been through so much, losing her mother in that terrible car accident 10 years ago. The same accident that left her paralyzed from the waist down. I'd left her in Jennifer's care when the New York opportunity came up, sending money every month to ensure she had the best of everything. The car pulled up to the large craftsman-style home in Palo Alto. I'd bought this house for Jennifer 15 years ago when she was going through her divorce. The mortgage was paid off now, thanks to my monthly contributions. The lawn looked immaculate, professionally maintained. Jennifer's Mercedes SUV sat in the driveway, gleaming. Everything looked perfect. I rang the doorbell, my heart pounding with anticipation. Through the frosted glass, I could see a figure approaching. The door swung open, and there was Jennifer, my eldest daughter. For a moment, she just stared, her face cycling through expressions. I couldn't quite read. Surprise, certainly, but something else? Fear? Dad? Her voice came out higher than usual. What are you? I mean, this is wonderful. You didn't tell me you were coming. Surprise visits are the best kind, I said, pulling her into a hug. She felt stiff in my arms. I wanted to see my girls. Where's Sarah? I can't wait to see how much she's grown. Jennifer pulled back, laughing, but it sounded forced. Oh, Sarah, right? She's at physical therapy. You know, her regular Thursday session. I glanced at my watch, 4:30 on a Thursday. I thought you mentioned in your emails that her therapy was Tuesday and Friday mornings. They changed the schedule, Jennifer said quickly, ushering me inside. You know how it is. Therapist schedules are always shifting around. Come in. Come in. Let me get you something to drink. You must be exhausted from the flight. The house was beautiful inside. Hardwood floors, modern furniture, expensive artwork on the walls. Jennifer had done well for herself, or rather, she'd done well with the money I'd been sending. $5,500 every month for 10 years. $660,000, plus the additional amounts for Sarah's medical expenses, her wheelchair, her medications, her special equipment. The house looks amazing, I said, settling onto the leather couch. And how's Sarah been doing? Your last email said she was starting to work with a new occupational therapist. She's doing great. Jennifer's smile was too bright. Really great. Making progress every day. She'll be so excited to see you. When will she be back from therapy? Oh, not until later. 7, maybe 8. You know how these sessions can run long. Jennifer perched on the edge of the armchair across from me, her hands clasping and unclasping. Why don't you tell me about New York? How was the business? I started telling her about the consulting firm, but I kept noticing things. The way her eyes darted toward the back of the house, the way she kept checking her phone, the slight tremor in her hands when she handed me a glass of water. Jennifer, I said, setting down the glass, is everything okay? You seem nervous. Nervous? No. I'm just surprised, that's all. It's been so long since you've been here. She laughed again, that same strained sound. I wish you'd given me some warning. I would have made sure Sarah was here, cleaned up. You know, the house is spotless. Well, yes, but still. She stood abruptly. I should start dinner. You'll stay for dinner, right? Of course you will. Let me just... She hurried toward the kitchen, nearly tripping over her own feet. Something was wrong. 10 years in corporate consulting had taught me to read people, to sense when something didn't add up, and nothing about Jennifer's behavior was adding up. I stood and walked toward the large windows overlooking the backyard. That's when I noticed something odd. The garage, which I remembered as a standard two-car structure, had been modified. There were curtains over the windows, heavy dark curtains, and there was a padlock on the door. "Jennifer," I called toward the kitchen, "why is there a lock on the garage?" She came rushing back, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "The garage? Oh, we've been having some issues with break-ins in the neighborhood. Just being cautious, with a padlock on the inside door. It's where I keep Sarah's expensive medical equipment. The insurance company recommended extra security. I'd been in negotiations for million-dollar contracts. I'd faced down hostile board members and cutthroat competitors. I knew when someone was lying to me. Where is Sarah? Jennifer, I told you physical therapy. Where is she really?" Jennifer's face crumbled. "Dad, please just let me explain." But I was already moving toward the back door. Jennifer tried to block my path, but I gently moved her aside. The backyard was as pristine as the front, professional landscaping, a small fountain, expensive patio furniture, and that garage with its covered windows and padlock. "Dad, please don't." Jennifer's voice was desperate now. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "I can explain everything. Just let me explain first before you." I walked to the garage door. The padlock was substantial, but the key was hanging right there on a hook beside the door, labeled in neat handwriting, "Storage." My hands shook as I reached for it. "Please," Jennifer whispered behind me. "Please, just listen." I unlocked the padlock and pushed open the door. The garage was dim, the curtains blocking most of the afternoon light. It took my eyes a moment to adjust. When they did, I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. The two-car garage had been converted into a living space, but calling it that was generous. One corner held a narrow bed with a thin mattress. Next to it was a small folding table with a laptop computer and stacks of papers. There was a mini fridge, a hot plate, and a microwave on a rickety shelf. A door led to what I assumed was a bathroom, probably the small half-bath that had originally been there for the yard workers. And in the center of all this, in a worn wheelchair, sat Sarah. My granddaughter looked up at me with wide, terrified eyes. She'd grown. Of course, she was 16 now, no longer the 6-year-old I'd last seen in person, but she was painfully thin, her wrists like twigs where they rested on the wheelchair's armrests. Her hair, which had been a lustrous dark brown like her mother's, hung limp and greasy around her face. She wore an oversized t-shirt that read charity case in bold letters. Grandpa. Her voice was barely a whisper. I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't process what I was seeing. The garage was cold. I could see Sarah's breath in the air. There was no heating, no air conditioning. The laptop on the table had multiple windows open, what looked like data entry spreadsheets. Beside it was a notebook filled with handwritten columns of numbers. "I can explain," Jennifer said from behind me. But I held up a hand, silencing her. "Sarah," I said, forcing my voice to work. "Sweetheart, how long have you been living out here?" Sarah glanced at Jennifer, then back at me. Years of something, fear conditioning. I didn't know what passed across her face. "It's okay, Grandpa. It's fine. I like it here. I have everything I need." That's when I noticed her arms. Both of them were covered in bruises, some old and yellowing, some fresh and purple. Her face, which I'd initially thought was just pale, had a shadow along one cheek, a bruise she tried to cover with makeup. "When did you last eat, Sarah?" She looked down. Aunt Jennifer brings meals. When was the last meal? Silence, Sarah. Yesterday, she whispered. At lunch. It was nearly 5 p.m. the next day. Over 24 hours. I turned to Jennifer. Everything I'd been feeling, the confusion, the shock, crystallized into something harder. Get out of the way. Dad, please let me. Get out of my way. She stepped aside, and I went to Sarah. Up close, I could see everything more clearly. The wheelchair was old, the same one I'd paid $3,000 for 10 years ago, now worn and squeaking. Where were the upgraded chairs I'd been sending money for? The state-of-the-art mobility devices, the equipment that was supposed to give her independence? I knelt beside her wheelchair, my knees protesting. Sarah, honey, I'm here now. I'm going to take care of this, but I need you to tell me the truth. All of it. Can you do that? She looked at Jennifer again. The fear in her eyes made me want to break something. She can't hear us. I lied, angling myself to block Jennifer from Sarah's view. It's just you and me. Tell me what's been happening. And slowly, haltingly, she did. The story came out in pieces. How Jennifer had moved her to the garage 2 years after I'd left. How it had started as temporary, just while Jennifer renovated Sarah's room, but then became permanent. How the heated and air-conditioned garage had gradually lost those amenities, as Jennifer couldn't afford the electrical bills. How Sarah's meals had gone from 3 a day to 2, then to 1, then to whatever Jennifer remembered to bring. She's busy, Sarah said, defending her. She has a lot going on. Her business and everything. What business? Her online boutique. She sells clothes and accessories. It's doing really well. I thought about the Mercedes in the driveway, the expensive furniture, the professional landscaping. And what about you? What do you do all day? Sarah gestured to the laptop. I work. I do data entry for Aunt Jennifer's business clients. It helps pay for my expenses. Your expenses? Aunt Jennifer says. I'm expensive. The wheelchair, the medications, the special food. She says I need to contribute. Sarah's voice got smaller. She says, if I don't help out, she might have to send me to a state facility. The state facility threat. Classic manipulation. How much does she pay you for this data entry work? Sarah looked confused. Pay me? She doesn't. I mean, I'm paying off my debt for living here and everything. I stood up, every muscle in my body tight with rage. I walked back to where Jennifer stood in the doorway. How much? I said quietly. Dad, I can explain. How much are you charging her for data entry work? Jennifer's mouth opened and closed. She's not doing it for pay. It's just helping out with my business, teaching her responsibility. She's 16 years old, paralyzed, living in an unheated garage, and doing unpaid labor for you. I kept my voice level through sheer force of will. For how long? It's not like that. How long? Jennifer flinched. 3 years. But Dad, you don't understand. Do you know how expensive it is to take care of her? The wheelchair, the doctor visits, the medications, the wheelchair I sent you $3,000 for 10 years ago. The same wheelchair that's falling apart. The doctor visits you've been sending me bills for, bills I now suspect are fabricated. The medications I've been paying for separately. Her face went white. I send you $5,500 a month, I said. Every month for 10 years? That's $660,000, plus another $120,000 for Sarah's specific expenses. Where did it go, Jennifer? I have expenses. The house, the car, the business startup costs. You used money meant for your disabled niece to fund a lifestyle and a business. She's being taken care of. She's living in a garage. My control snapped. She's malnourished, covered in bruises, doing forced labor, and wearing a shirt that says charity cases. Those were her work clothes, Jennifer said weakly. I bought them as a joke. Get out. What? Get out of this garage. Get away from Sarah. Get out of my sight before I do something I'll regret. Jennifer backed away, still trying to speak, to explain, to justify. I didn't want to hear it. I turned back to Sarah, who was crying silently. "Pack your things," I said gently. "Whatever you want to keep. You're coming with me." But Aunt Jennifer said, "I don't care what Aunt Jennifer said. I'm your grandfather, and I'm taking you home. Well, first we're going to a hospital to get you checked out, and then we're going to a hotel, and then we're figuring out what home means. But you are never, ever sleeping in this garage again." I helped Sarah gather her meager belongings, some clothes, a few books, a photograph of her mother. That was it. That was everything she had in the world. As we were leaving, I noticed the data entry work on the laptop. I pulled out my phone and took pictures of everything: the spreadsheets, the business documents, the logs showing hundreds of hours of work. Jennifer was pacing in the living room when we came through. "You can't just take her. I'm her legal guardian." "Was her legal guardian?" I corrected. "As of right now, I'm filing for emergency custody, and I'm reporting you for financial exploitation of a disabled minor. Dad, please, save it for the lawyers." Getting Sarah to the car was harder than I expected. The front steps had no ramp. I had paid for a ramp to be installed years ago, so I had to lift her and the wheelchair separately. She weighed almost nothing. A 16-year-old girl should not weigh almost nothing. At the emergency room, the doctors were horrified. Sarah was 15 pounds underweight. She had bruises in various stages of healing, some inflicted directly, others from falls that occurred because her wheelchair hadn't been properly maintained. She had a urinary tract infection that had gone untreated for weeks. She was dehydrated and anemic. "Who's been caring for this child?" the attending physician asked me privately. "That's what I'm about to find out," I said. While Sarah was being treated, I started making calls. First, to a lawyer friend who specialized in family law, then to a private investigator I'd worked with during corporate cases, then to my accountant to start tracing every penny I'd sent Jennifer over the past decade. The private investigator called me back within 3 hours. "You're going to want to sit down for this." I was already sitting in an uncomfortable hospital chair, but I gripped the armrests tighter. "Your daughter Jennifer has been operating a successful online boutique for the past 5 years. Annual revenue in the high 6 figures. She owns 2 properties, the house you bought her and a condo in Santa Cruz that she rents out. She drives a Mercedes leased at $900 a month. She takes quarterly trips to fashion markets in LA and New York. How? Best I can tell, about 80% of it came from the money you were sending. The other 20% came from Sarah's labor." "Explain that." "The data entry work, it wasn't for random clients. It was for Jennifer's boutique, inventory management, customer service, emails, bookkeeping. Your granddaughter has been running the back end of a successful business and seeing exactly zero compensation for it. In fact, based on the volume of work, I'd estimate Sarah's contributed labor worth about $60,000 a year. I did the math. 3 years, $180,000 in unpaid labor from a disabled minor." "There's more," the investigator said. "Jennifer claimed Sarah as a dependent on her taxes and collected disability payments on her behalf. Those payments, around $1,400 a month, never went to Sarah's care. And about those medical bills you've been paying, half of them are inflated and the other half are fabricated. The specialized occupational therapist doesn't exist. The custom wheelchair upgrades were never purchased. The experimental medication trial was a complete fiction." I closed my eyes. "How much in total, over the 10 years? I'd estimate Jennifer fraudulently obtained approximately $850,000 from you. Build me a case. Document everything. I want charges filed. Sir, are you sure she's your daughter? She tortured my granddaughter for profit. She's no daughter of mine." The next week was a blur of lawyers and paperwork. Emergency custody was granted easily. The hospital report alone was damning enough. Child Protective Services opened an investigation. The district attorney's office started looking into fraud charges, and I discovered the full extent of Jennifer's operation. The notebook in Sarah's garage, those weren't just business notes. They were logs Jennifer had forced Sarah to keep, tracking her work hours to ensure she was earning her keep. Every meal was documented and assigned a dollar value. Every use of electricity, every flush of the toilet, every minute of hot water was logged and added to Sarah's debt. She told me I owed her $4,000, Sarah said quietly when I asked about it. We were in a hotel suite. Sarah had her own room with a proper bed, a TV, and best of all, heat. She said once I paid it off, things would get better. And how much of that $4,000 did you pay off? I don't know. She never told me. She just said, I needed to work harder. The debt, I realized, was a fiction designed to keep Sarah compliant. There was never going to be an end to it. Jennifer would have kept her in that garage forever, working for free, living in fear and cold and hunger. I'd like to say confronting Jennifer gave me satisfaction, but it didn't. We met in my lawyer's office. Jennifer brought her own attorney. Of course, she'd aged in the past week, stress evident in the lines around her mouth. I loved her, she said at one point, as if that explained everything. I loved Sarah. Things got out of hand. You locked a disabled child in an unheated garage for 4 years. It wasn't unheated at first. You stole nearly $1 million. I was going to pay it back. You forced her to work without compensation. She needed to learn responsibility. I leaned forward. She's 16. She's paralyzed. She lost her mother. And you made her believe she was a burden, that she had to earn the right to exist. Jennifer started crying, but they were selfish tears. Tears for herself, for getting caught, not for what she'd done. I needed the money, she said. The business was struggling at first. I was going to make it back and then tell you. I was going to surprise everyone with how successful I'd become, on the backs of a disabled child and your father's trust. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering something to her. Jennifer nodded, wiping her eyes. What do you want? She asked me. I want you to plead guilty to all charges. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Yes, Sarah counts. Fraud, child endangerment, forced labor, and I want full restitution. Every penny you took, plus compensation for Sarah's labor, plus punitive damages, that's over $1 million. Then you'll be paying it back for a very long time. The lawyer whispered again. Jennifer's face hardened. And if I fight this, then I make it my mission to ensure you spend as much time in prison as legally possible. And trust me, Jennifer, I have resources now. I have connections. I have a decade of consulting work that taught me exactly how to dismantle people like you. She knew I wasn't bluffing. In the end, Jennifer pleaded guilty. She sold the condo, sold the boutique, and surrendered most of her assets. She got 3 years in prison, a light sentence in my opinion, but the prosecutor said it was the best we could hope for, given that this was her first offense and she ultimately cooperated. The restitution would take her years to fully pay, but every penny would go into a trust for Sarah. As for Sarah, recovery was slow. The physical recovery anyway, getting her weight back up, treating the infections, repairing her wheelchair, and getting her proper medical equipment. Those things took months, but were achievable. The emotional recovery is still ongoing. Sarah struggles with feelings of worthlessness. She apologizes constantly for eating, for taking up space, for existing. She has nightmares about being sent back to the garage. She hoards food in her room because she can't quite believe meals will keep coming. We work with a therapist 3 times a week. We're making progress. Last month, Sarah laughed at a joke, a real laugh, spontaneous and genuine. Last week, she asked if she could join an online support group for other disabled teens. Yesterday, she told me she wanted to learn graphic design. These might seem like small things, but they're huge. They're signs that the girl Jennifer tried to break is healing. I retired from consulting, sold the New York apartment, bought a house here in California, a real house with wide doorways, ramps, and a room for Sarah that's 3 times the size of that garage. Her walls are painted the color she chose, a soft lavender. She has a proper bed with a memory foam mattress. She has a desk for her computer, shelves for her books, and a window that looks out onto the garden. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about those 4 years. 4 years while I was building my legacy in New York, my granddaughter was sleeping in a cold garage, hungry and bruised, believing she deserved it. I can't get those years back. I can't undo the damage Jennifer did, but I can be here now. People ask me if I regret going to New York, if I regret leaving Sarah with Jennifer. The truth is complicated. If I hadn't gone, I wouldn't have had the resources to fight back the way I did. I wouldn't have had the money for the lawyers, the investigators, the therapy. I wouldn't have been able to provide the life Sarah has now. But I also should have known something was wrong. I looked back at Jennifer's emails and the signs were there. The way she deflected questions about Sarah's daily life. The way she never seemed to have photos from the past few years. The way video calls were always inconvenient or had technical difficulties. I wanted to believe my daughter was trustworthy. So I convinced myself the oddities were just oddities. Communication difficulties, scheduling conflicts, nothing sinister. That's the lesson I want people to understand. Evil doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it wears the face of family. Sometimes it comes wrapped in excuses and rationalizations. Sometimes the person abusing your loved one is someone you trust implicitly. Jennifer started with small justifications, using a little of the money for herself because she deserved it for taking care of Sarah, moving Sarah to the garage temporarily because it was convenient, cutting back on meals because Sarah didn't need that much anyway. Each step was a tiny rationalization that led to the next, until my daughter had become someone who could look a starving, disabled child in the eye and demand more work. The hardest part? Jennifer still doesn't think she did anything that wrong. In her mind, she provided food and shelter. She kept Sarah alive. She even taught her valuable job skills. The fact that she did it in the worst possible way, while stealing from both Sarah and me, is something she's rationalized away. In one of our last conversations before her sentencing, she actually said, "I did my best with a difficult situation. I told her the difficult situation was one she created, but I don't think she'll ever understand that." Sarah knows, though. Sarah understands in a way I wish she didn't have to. She understands that love isn't just a word you say. It's actions. It's showing up. It's putting someone else's needs before your own conveniences. "You came back," she told me a few months ago, out of nowhere. We were having breakfast. Something as simple as that still feels special. And she just looked at me and said it. "When you found out, you came back." Of course I did. You're my granddaughter. Aunt Jennifer would say that too. But she didn't mean it the way you do. She's right. Jennifer said all the right words while doing all the wrong things. I was thousands of miles away, but I dropped everything to be here when it mattered. That's what I want people to take from this story. It's not about the dramatic rescue or the legal victory. It's about the daily choice to be present for the people who need you, to pay attention to the signs, to trust your instincts when something feels wrong. And it's about understanding that family can hurt you worse than strangers ever could, because you trust them with your most vulnerable moments. Sarah's turning 17 next month. We're planning a party, her first real birthday celebration in years. She wants to invite the kids from her online support group who live locally. She wants a cake from the fancy bakery downtown. She wants to wear a dress that isn't 2 sizes too big and doesn't have cruel words printed on it. I asked her what she wanted as a gift. She thought about it for a long time. "I want you to promise you'll never leave again," she finally said. "I promise. Even if you get another job offer, even if it's amazing and far away, my most important job is right here." She smiled at that. We're both learning what home means. For 10 years, I thought home was whatever place could advance my career. Jennifer thought home was whatever place could advance her bank account, but Sarah knows better. Home isn't a place at all. It's the people who show up for you, the ones who see you at your worst and choose to stay, the ones who believe you deserve warmth and food and dignity, not as rewards for good behavior, but as basic human rights. I can't give Sarah back the years Jennifer stole. I can't erase the trauma or fast forward through the healing, but I can give her this: a grandfather who chose her over everything else, who believed her when she finally felt safe enough to speak, who fought for her when she'd forgotten how to fight for herself. Looking back at that day when I unlocked the garage door, I remember the cold that hit me first, the physical cold of the unheated space, but then the deeper cold, the emotional chill of realizing someone I loved had done something unforgivable to someone else I loved. The warmth came later, when Sarah fell asleep in the hospital, finally safe, when she ate her first real meal in days, when she realized I wasn't going to leave her in that garage. And the warmth is here now, in our home, in the sound of her laugh, in the way she asks for seconds at dinner, in the plans she's making for her future, plans that go beyond survival, beyond paying off imaginary debts, beyond just getting through each day. Jennifer will be out of prison, eventually. She'll rebuild her life. Part of me hopes she finds genuine redemption, though I'm not counting on it. Another part of me doesn't care what happens to her, as long as she stays away from Sarah, because Sarah is healing, slowly, painfully, courageously healing, and I get to be here for it. Not from thousands of miles away, not through monthly checks and quarterly video calls, but here, present, showing up, being the grandfather I should have been all along. That's my revenge against what Jennifer did. Not the legal victory, though that matters. Not the restitution, though Sarah deserves every penny. My revenge is Sarah's recovery. It's every smile, every goal, every moment when she remembers she deserves to exist without apology. It's proving that Jennifer didn't win, that 4 years in a garage couldn't break the girl my daughter tried so hard to destroy. And it's the future we're building together, grandfather and granddaughter, both of us, learning that it's never too late to choose the people who matter most.